Broadcast, where chaos, creativity, and common sense collide. Your host, Joel Freeman, was kicked out of high school in Alberta, Canada. He left home at 17 and hitchhiked around North America as a long-haired hippie and dope-smoking fool. He made a 180-degree change, becoming one of the first chaplains in the history of the NBA. As a professional speaker, Joel has traveled to well over 55 countries. His many books have been published in 28 foreign translations. Pieces from his Black History collection have been seen by millions at the United Nations and many other venues. And now, the Chief Mischief Maker himself, Dr. Joel A. Freeman.
Hey guys. Yeah, I'm Teenager Joel. Well, maybe that's not correct. Last week, Dad knocked the L out of me. I deserved it. I guess my name going forward is Joe.
Yep. Hi, I'm Joe Freeman. Had the L knocked out of me when I was 16. Several times, actually, probably. But tonight we have a great show. We have a gentleman by the name of William Simpson III. He's in a 400-foot cabin on the side of a mountain in Northern California, I believe, and he's hooked up by satellite. We're going to be speaking to him in just a few minutes. He's a gentleman who has something called he's a founder of Wild Horse Fire Brigade. He spent years living in the wilderness in Northern California, observing wild horse herds in their natural habitat, and he shares firsthand what it's like studying these animals, kind of like Jane Goodall did with apes and gorillas. And he's explained how wild horses have can survive in a rugged terrain, and what makes them different from domesticated animals and horses, and why populations have declined dramatically. And he's also, the reason why it's called the Wild Horse Fire Brigade is because the whole idea of wild horses helping to deal with the vegetation and to stop wildfires from developing and expanding. So he's got a very interesting life, he's a songwriter. He's got an eclectic, you're going to hear from him in just a few moments. Now, horses, I've always had a fascination with horses. When I was a kid, I was riding horses all the time. Back a few years back, we had about 10 acres and always had at least one or two horses. And I loved riding bareback. And one of the things that I've learned over the years about horses is they can't breathe through their mouths. They only breathe through their noses. They have almost a 360-degree vision. But they can't see directly behind them or just underneath their nose in front. They'll sleep standing up. They have a kind of a locking leg mechanism. They can sleep laying down for a deeper sleep, but they have that ability and have excellent memories, often remembering people and places for years. The largest eyes of any land mammals in the world, and teeth that never stop growing. In our human ears, we have 3 muscles that control our ears. They have 10 muscles that control their ears and can flip them around about 180 degrees. And as us humans, we can hear like 12 points around us. So if you hear something happening over here, there's kind of like a large area that we kind of have to scan to see where that noise came from. Well, horses have 64 points around them. So there's a very specific, when they hear a noise, boom, they're on it instantly to that particular spot. And another thing is that foals are born with hooves covered in soft membrane. They call it fairy slippers or golden hooves. It's to protect their mothers during birth, coming through the birth canal. And also, the horses have highly sensitive whiskers because they can't see directly beneath their nose. And they can, like if you hand them a carrot or an apple or something like that, the smell is there and the whiskers are figuring it out, if it's something that's viable for food. The oldest horse that's lived is about 62 years of age. And the first horses in Australia, for instance, we got a lot of Australian listeners, was 1788, first horse in Australia. And many times they'll kind of curl the top lip upwards when they're taking a new scent. And there's just so many different elements. The horse's hooves are made of keratin, very similar to our fingernails. And anyway, we've got a really interesting show with William Simpson, and can't wait to get to have William come on up front and to talk. But we're going to listen to a song right now, and the song that we're going to hear is called "Bulldog with a Smile." So let's put that song on, Mel. A bulldog.
I'm on the bulldog with a smile, never backing down, working hard with laughter, spreading joy around. Through the blood, sweat, and tears, I find a way to laugh, but I'll never bow down to the golden calf. Integrity's my compass, guides me true. In a world of shortcuts, I see things through. I balance time like a juggler in the ring, knowing when to grind and when to let my heart sing. I've seen the highs and lows, the sun and the rain, but I keep on pushing, I don't complain. With a heart full of kindness and hands ready to give, I show them what it means to truly live. I value what matters, God, family, and friends. The love we share, it never ends. In a world of hurry, take it slow, cherish every moment, let the good times flow. I'm a bulldog with a smile, never backing down, working hard with laughter, spreading joy around. Through the blood, sweat, and tears, I find a way to laugh, but I'll never bow down to the golden calf. Yeah, I'm a bulldog with a smile. Come what may, with integrity and humor, I'll find my way. I walk that extra country mile, 'cause I'm a bulldog with a smile. I'm a bulldog with a smile.
Got the bulldogs in the background there, just to make you feel right at home. William, welcome to the show, and so glad you could make it today to be with us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Now, folks, if you want to join in William is just full of a lot of knowledge and wisdom and understanding. And if you have any questions for him, specific questions that are germane to the topic, feel free to write them in, and Mel will determine if they are germane to the show. And then we have the QR code above that has a link tree and everything else for the show, and all kinds of information about what it means to be a mischief maker. And we hope that this show will help you to become a better mischief maker in your realm of the world. Now, William, I know we have you have a very interesting interest, and you're committed to it. This is not just an academic thing about horses, wild horses specifically. But I want us to put a pin in that and step back into your childhood, and if you could give us a sense of what your childhood was like, your early environment, and what connected you to nature in the way that it has.
Well, thank you. Thank you again for letting me be on the show here. Well, I guess if I go back, I'm 73 now. So if I go back to my formative years, I spent most of my time on the ranch in the Cascade-Siskiyou Mountains up here. I was born down pretty much in Malibu. My dad was LAPD, and he wanted to get us out on a ranch his whole life. And my mom and dad worked hard, and we bought this whole ranch out of foreclosure in Southern Oregon up in the mountains. And when we got up there, the work began, and it never ended until I went to college. Then things got a little easier on me. But as far as the animals, we had all kinds of animals on the, we raised polled Herefords, and we had sheep, and we had pigs and chickens and rabbits, and I mean, you name it, and we had it. I had a pet owl, even a baby owl fell out of a tree, and a little screech owl that was my pet for a while. And when you grow up around animals and being a rancher, I think that the basic ranchers, and I'm not talking about the big commercial industrial guys that are growing, beef by the ton. I'm talking about your, small ranchers. I think everybody pretty much does it because you love animals. You got to love them to deal with all that hard work and labor every day. It doesn't end. I must have dug 1,000 post holes. We made our own posts. We felled trees. We cut them to length. We split them, and we, tempered them and treated them with creosote. And then you got to dig holes with a handheld post hole digger. And yeah, I mean, it ain't easy. But there's moments where time almost stops when, I would be up in the mountain on my horse and looking at the view and listening to the wind in the forest and looking at the animals around. And time almost stops still in those moments, and they're pretty special. And I think some of the ranchers, we live for that. And I grew up with domestic horses. I had 2 horses. My brothers and sisters all had one, and but they were quite a bit different than the horses I'm looking at and studying now.
So you went to college. Now, do you have siblings, brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I got there's 5 kids in the family. I was the oldest, and I one sister and 3 brothers. And I, when I was growing up, this is in the '60s, and Vietnam was happening. My draft number was 19, so I
Hmm.
was destined to go to Vietnam. And we were all, this is black and white TV days. We were watching John Wayne movies and stuff, and me and my buddies in high school we were all going to join the Marines and be war heroes, right? And so we but then my mom, unbeknownst to me, applied because I did have good grades in high school, and I had abilities to understand things. And she applied to Oregon State, and I got admitted. And then I was the first person in our family to actually be admitted into a university.
Hmm.
And my dad, who was 82nd Airborne, former LAPD, tough guy, he was a BAR. He was in combat and during World War II in Europe for 3 years. And so he was tough. He was a real tough guy. And he was pretty proud of the fact that I was able to get in college. He said, if I survived the Vietnam War and I got back alive, he'd kill me. So I would tell my buddies I wasn't going to Vietnam. I had to go to Oregon State, or I would be dead one way or the other. So,
So, what did you study in college?
well, my mom was pretty adamant that I needed to be a doctor because being a rancher, she said, is just you're too poor all the time, and the doctors make all the money, and that's what she told me. And she says you got to be a doctor. And so I was a pre-med science major, and so I studied physics, chemistry, botany, biology. I even took some pharmacy and meteorology, and I was just kind of all over. And eventually, they kicked me out of the major in my department and made me in liberal arts because I was studying such a wide variety of science. I was taking 21 credits a term of science because I was
Wow.
super interested in all this stuff. But they said, hey, that's, we have a system, and you got to stick with this particular curriculum, for your major. And I said, well, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. I want to study all this stuff.
Hmm.
And science really interested me. I mean, that was my cup of tea.
Hmm. Now, did you always see yourself as someone pursuing life outside a conventional system, or is it something that kind of evolved over time?
Um, no, I don't know. I guess I have an adventurer's blood. That's what people tell me. I was right out of high school. I was already a private pilot, and
Hmm.
in fact, when I was heading into my senior year, I got recruited to go work with some guys and fly aircraft. And the attraction was I could be trained in advanced aircraft, helicopters, and multi-engine airplanes if I decided to go work for these guys, as in different countries. And so and it was not military. These were private people, and so I ended up doing a lot of flying and got a commercial instrument, airplane, and helicopter license, multi-engine, turbine rated. Flew helicopters and airplanes all over the place, South America, and
Hmm.
ended up flying in Hawaii, making money, flying tours around Haleakala Crater, and I had an air cargo service. I could fly the milk run literally from Maui over to Lanai for the school there in the morning. Landed in a pineapple plantation and unloaded the milk, and they'd throw in a whole bunch of really nice pineapples for me to take home. And but and then I was always interested in sailing, and so I did some couple of 4 year sailing adventures, built a couple of different big boats, and just made enough money with my knowledge to do things that I was able to just take 4 years off and go sailing for 4 years offshore. The second voyage was from 2008 to 2011, and on a steel motor sailor I built, and spent 4 years in the Sea of Cortez.
Hmm. Were there any moments where it was like really dangerous with high seas and fear of loss of life?
You mitigate risk with training, and
Hmm.
just with flying aircraft. I had some of the best. All of my instructors were ex-military, so risk and is mitigated with training and equipment. And it's the same thing with, I went through the academy. I went through the Maritime Academy, and I'm a retired United States Merchant Marine officer as
Hmm.
well. So I ran passenger carrying vessels. I ran a medical missionary ship for a while. Um, did a lot of different things, but and I've sailed in hurricanes. I mean, it depends on your capability and the vessel you have. There's ways to deal with heavy weather, and so yeah, I mean, there's times out there where it's frightening. I'll tell you, the most frightening thing I probably have ever done was be involved with wildfire. I mean, when we
Hmm.
had the big Klamathon fire up here by the ranch, I don't care what anybody tells you or how much training you got. When you look at a 200-foot wall of flame coming at you, it sends a shiver up your spine.
Hmm. You can hear it,
Oh yeah, it makes
feel
its
it.
own weather. I mean, I tell people, I looked into the eyes of the dragon,
Hmm.
and it has a sound. It has a sound to it, and then the smoke is, it's like the dragon's breath. It's deadly. You breathe that stuff, it'll kill you.
Hmm. I want to revisit that in a little bit, but looking back, what foundational values from your upbringing help to inform how you live your life now?
I think my training in science developed a decision paradigm where I put a lot of weight in logic, and I tried to, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm an unemotional person. Most of my poetry, it comes from uh, different, pain and angst and suffering. We all suffer. We have all been through tough times, and but I use that to power some of that writing I do. But I would say that going through university and studying science and seeing how things work, it's not like philosophy. Science to me, you do a certain thing and you get a certain result, and and it's it taught me the value of logic. Of course, since then I studied a lot of different philosophies, and I've read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and a lot of other books on philosophy and logic and things like that. And I think that my background in science, though, was probably the most helpful thing for me, because it gave me a level of confidence to look into different areas and understand, at a real basic level, what's happening. I mean, when I study uh, any kind of chemistry, I'm thinking in terms of valence states of different, atomic structures and atoms and all these different things, and how the planets work, and then looking back at the history of science, the the tough times that even those guys went through, but how their foundation in science kept them grounded. You know, the logic of science, I think, is a very grounding thing.
Now, before we started the show, when we were off camera, you were mentioning that every morning you wake up and chop wood, and that's how you heat the cabin. And what about living off grid? What led you to choose living off grid, and what kind of things did you go through personally to prepare yourself for that decision? And being on a boat is off the grid. This is a different type of off the grid.
Yeah, I think my experience with expedition sailing, you know, when you pack up in an expedition sailboat and you head offshore, if something breaks, you could be in deep trouble. You could die.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be ready to fix things. You have to have parts on board. You have to have the skill set for diagnostics as well as for repair. And I did 2 4-year sailing expeditions where this isn't like sailing around some bay and then going up to the dock at night. This is offshore. You're gone. You're 1,000 miles from land, and any potential help or parts. And so when you do that, and that's, I think, the ultimate off-grid living. And in fact, National Geographic even did a show about my boat and being offshore, and in regard to how that really creates a level of preparedness for different scenarios that might even occur on land. And so, but for me, I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy actually being in heavy weather and watching the boat that I built hold up to the stresses and being ready for whatever is going to happen. It's sort of there's a certain pride of accomplishing something that you could go out in those conditions and reliably. You know, I'm sure the people that build these spaceships feel that feeling, or somebody that builds a race car that wins a race. And so up in the mountains here, it's quite a bit easier, a lot less risk, you know, because I'm not 1,000 miles away from the hardware store. I'm only about an hour and 45 minutes by truck. So if I need something, I can drive down the mountain and get it. So, but the skills, I guess I'm cheating out here because I learned all the skills to do this easily at sea where it's really tough. And there's no forgiveness out there. And then do it on land. And on top of that, my whole platform isn't moving the whole time, you know, I mean, which makes things even more fun trying to fix something when the whole platform's moving. So, yeah, but it keeps you in shape. It keeps you sharp, you know, I mean, and the other thing too is I like having a low carbon footprint out here. You know, I mean, we let nature, we try to improve the situation out here with nature. So the last thing I want to do is come out here and create a great big carbon footprint, you know. So we take down trees that are dead, that are going to fall over or burn anyway. We'd never take down a tree that's being used by woodpeckers or what they call grain trees. A lot of times there'll be a tree that dies or burns. It'll still be standing, and the woodpeckers will peck deep holes, and then they'll put acorns in those holes. And it looks like a million eyeballs on the tree. And so winter for a food store. So we never take those down. But yeah, I mean, it's the first time you see one, you'll step back. I mean, it will almost scare you. It looks like a million eyeballs looking at you. And it's actually these acorns in these holes, and they're right against each other everywhere. It's just like honeycomb. And but yeah, we live with what nature gives us, and you can do that comfortably, understanding how it all works out here. It's a symphony of cooperation with multiple species of flora and fauna.
Now we have Tex. He is Tex Anderson's. How does the isolation affect your personal perception of community and nation?
Well, I enjoy isolation because, yeah, thank you for the question. I enjoy it because it allows me to focus on my writing and on my poetry and things like that. I've been around people quite a bit. When I had my internet company, I had 106 employees. We were funded by Bear Stearns, Goldman Sachs, Silicon Valley Bank. I had 106 employees. I was out in the world all the time, and you kind of get up to here with society at some point, because a lot of people are difficult to work with. I mean, it's just I studied psychology at university, and as part of the curriculum, I forget, it was psychology 301 or something, and you get a book on psychology and you open it up, and lo and behold is the bell curve of intellectual IQ, right?
Yes.
And a bell curve is like an upside down cup, and the bell curve of the human IQ, the top of the center of the bell curve is an IQ of 100.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at that, you go, wow, that means half the people have an IQ under 100. And maybe those are some of the people that are more difficult to deal with. And I'm not trying to be demeaning to anybody. I'm just trying to say this is a fact of life on the planet. And so it's difficult sometimes trying to educate somebody about and I teach wild horse ecology, by the way, to university students. And it's very difficult for me to identify with somebody who has difficulty learning. Especially when I try to help them improve their life through understanding something better, right? So, when you understand how things work, life becomes easier. In fact, I have a John Wayne cup here that it says on one side, life is hard. It's even harder when you're stupid.
Stupid.
So that's how
I love it. So that's the title of your next song right there.
Again, yeah. Well, so anyhow, it's hard for me. I don't like to see people suffer. I really don't. And when they're suffering, what's history say? Those who haven't learned it are doomed to repeat it. I try to help people in my community. That's why I was on the fire line 9 days. I did that for a community. I did that because I didn't want to see people get dead. I didn't want to see ranches burned. I didn't want to see 120,000 acres of pristine old growth forest and all the animals in it die. And so as far as community, I served, I've done a lot. I ran a medical missionary boat for free, pro bono. I've done a lot of things for community without pay. My mom raised us saying that you don't have to always get paid for doing what's right. And that's why we run our nonprofit, Wild Horse Fire Brigade. Now, all the other nonprofits, or I should say most of them, get these donations and they pay themselves fairly handsomely to run the nonprofits. Now, I'm the executive director, and I haven't collected a penny, and I don't want a penny for what I'm doing, because what's important to me is the survival of the human race, first of all, because we're in trouble. A lot of people don't realize it, but we're in trouble on this planet. And also for our community, because when you kill off your large body herbivores, you do tremendous damage to ecosystems, which was leading to these big wildfires. And so that's kind of where, as far as working with community, I think my job right now at this last part of my life is to figure out how I can take all of my combined lessons learned and empirical experience and put that into a paradigm where I can make a difference to help other people's lives. And having read the UCLA study of late, it came out in 2024, UCLA studied the wildfire smoke in California. It's the same everywhere, but they just did it for California. 5,000 people die prematurely every year from wildfire smoke. Prematurely, men, women, children, little babies in their cribs. They breathe this smoke, they can die or they can develop a comorbidity and then die 10 years later. So during the course of their 11-year study, this is UCLA now we're talking about, very credible university, 55,000 Californians died prematurely, men and women, doctors, nurses, bus drivers, ditch diggers, dead prematurely because they were genetically susceptible to the toxins in the smoke. But UCLA couldn't take it to the next level. They didn't know what exactly in the smoke was doing this. But of course, I started writing about it after my wife died in 2019. I knew in my heart something was going on, and it wasn't just particulates in the smoke.
The carbon
there was something
particulates.
else going on. Yeah, it wasn't just that. There was something else going on. There was toxins, and she was in the best hospital. with the best doctors. We had Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, all these guys trying to figure out how to save her life, $1 million spent. And they all said, we can't stop what happened. It's an autoimmune degenerative disease triggered by something in the smoke. Well, guess what? In December of 2025, American Chemical Society was conducting their study. And I'm sure, because I sent my stuff out to everybody for 6 years after my wife passed in 2019, because I knew something was up. Something was happening. It wasn't regular, and the fires are different now, and I can explain why if you want. But something killed her, and I started writing about novel toxins. I have a whole bunch of papers, probably 50 papers out there, novel toxins. Well, American Chemical Society dug in, and they found out that there's a new type of VOCs out there that we haven't even been looking for. We're not even monitoring for these, and they found them. And so far they know that there's 21% more stuff in this fire smoke that we didn't know about that are these deadly VOCs. And so these volatile organic compounds are in the class of carcinogens. We just found out about them now. We've identified them. And they say in their study there may even be more. And we need to start looking for them. We need to actually monitor for these things because they're deadly. And so that explains the death toll that UCLA found. Well, then what I did is, of course, being me and kind of a mischief maker myself, I took that UCLA study and dropped it into a supercomputer. And I said, please extrapolate this on the West Coast of the United States, because they just did it for California. And oh, by the way, the economic damage for those 55,000 people that died in California during the 11-year study was $435 billion. Wow. Almost $500 billion in economic damage. So I dropped the UCLA study in a supercomputer. Please extrapolate this to the West Coast of the United States, just the West Coast of the United States. Supercomputer said it's about 36,000 people dying prematurely, men, women, and children. You can be 100 miles away from the fire and die. Okay. Men, women, and children, 36,000 dead. The cost of that is $218 billion. And that is on top of the property and casualty damage of $50 billion that the insurance companies are paying for. This is just the impact from the health services. I mean, my wife's one case, $1 million, one person, $1 million. So, so we're looking at, this should be on front page news. Well, the UCLA study should have been on the front page of the LA Times. Well, guess what? They're being censored. They've been told not to publish this study because they're afraid it will cause even more economic damage, because when the smoke comes and people know it's deadly, they're going to leave. They're not going to go to work, because you're rolling the dice. If you show up and you breathe that, and if you're even 100 miles away, you're rolling the dice. You could be one of those 5,000 people a year in California dead, or one of the 36,000 people in the Western United States dead. And then the shocker on top of, as bad as that is,
can you hold a shocker? Can you hold a shocker? We're at the top of the hour. I have to stop, but I want to hear the shocker. Hold on to that, and then we're going to come right back after a word from our sponsor.
I scraped the dirt out of the carved inscriptions after L.T. Bouchard unearthed the Rosetta Stone near the Nile. Incredible moment. Wish you were there. Help the Rosetta Stone Traveling Exhibit Project transform an ancient artifact, the Rosetta Stone, into a modern metaphor for problem solving. This is life-changing.
Well, there you have it. One of the soldiers who was with Lieutenant Pierre Bouchard at the unearthing of the Rosetta Stone is speaking to us about the Rosetta Universe Project. This is a project where I'm taking the ancient artifact, the Rosetta Stone, and transforming it into a modern metaphor for problem solving and critical thinking. And one of the things is that when people donate, will receive this belt, the Jack Johnson World Championship belt that that I designed for this special purpose, for just as a thank you for people who donate. So you go to the QR code, or the QR code above, and that'll take you to the link tree. Number 1 on the link tree is the Rosetta Universe. And of course, on the link tree, you'll learn about how to get a hold of William and learn more about the Wild Horse Fire Brigade. Now, William, I interrupted you. I apologize for that. There's a gentleman who had a kind of a funny comment, which maybe we can pull up. He says, you mean that Marjorie Taylor Greene is wrong, that the wildfires in California are not caused by Jews in space with lasers, LOL. We'll let that go. Ken, I get your humor. I love it. And we'll move right into the, thank you, Ken. So, William, you were about to say something profound, and I interrupted you. I apologize, but just to jump right in on that, because we want to now meld together the wildfires with the wild horses and spend the rest of our time talking about that, if that's okay.
Yeah, we will. So, and just a quick recap, UCLA did a study. It came out in 2024. Anybody can find it. You Google UCLA death toll wildfire smoke, and you will find that study. I dropped it into a supercomputer. I says what it is on the West Coast, 36,000 people dead prematurely, a cost of $218 billion annually. And the thing that really was the shocker for me is the computer said, for every person that died prematurely, there's 5 to 10 cases of comorbidities that are caused where people will just die outside the time frame of the study. So it's actually 5 to 10 times worse because, for instance, a little kid, 8 years old, outside skateboarding, he breathes in the smoke. He develops a comorbidity, heart, liver, brain. I mean, this smoke's even caused mental decline. And then he gets married and he gets a job and he's 27 and suddenly that comorbidity triggers and he dies. You know, and so
no one pulls the strings back to that.
No. And so we've got to so here's the thing. Bottom line with fire, it's real simple. I learned this in Cub Scouts. No fuel, no fire. It's that simple. The Sahara Desert's not on fire, is it? It's sand. Doesn't burn. No fuel, no fire. It doesn't matter. I tried to explain this to people, even county commissioners. Some of them are not thinking the way they need to think. Perception is everything. I say, look, it's real simple. No fuel, no fire. We can't control causation. Lightning, arson, lasers, matches, chains dragging, cars wrecking. It doesn't matter. Meteors hitting. None of that we can affect. As Marcus Aurelius says, worry about the things you can change, not the things you can't. We're not going to change any of that. Causation is beyond our control. We can control fuel. We can control fuel. There's a lot of ways to do that. The key fuel, 64% of all deaths and damage from wildfire is grass and brush fires, not forest fires. Okay. 96% of the deaths from wildfires are from grass and brush fires, not forest fires. So logging, people say logging is a solution. It is not. Logging is good economically, but logging is not good for stopping fire. In fact, logging makes wildfires worse in areas where you have a collapsed herbivory. And so here's the key. The key is Dr. William J. Ripple studied the collapse of large body herbivores, a big study out there. That's what it's called, Collapse of Large Body Herbivores by William J. Ripple. He says on every continent they looked at where there was a collapse of the herbivory, and the herbivory are critters that eat grass and brush. So in Australia, kangaroos, here, wild horses, deer, elk. California right now, California is down 1.5 million deer. Now, those deer were eating about 2 million tons of annual grass and brush. Every year, they were mowing the lawn ubiquitously. Nobody's paying attention to what the deer are eating. I do, because what happens is if you don't have the deer and the elk mowing the lawn and keeping the fuel loads down, you have abnormally hot fire. See, and that's what people miss. Climate change doesn't make fires hotter. The fires are 1,000 degrees hotter than they used to be. That's a function of fuel. Okay. And the function of fuel has to do with the loss of the herbivory. The deer are gone. So you got 2 million tons of grass and brush out there not being managed. And guess what? The minute it catches on fire, it burns abnormally hot because the exothermic energy from the oxidation combustion. So you have oxygen, fuel, and ignition creates a fire. And when you have wind, what wind does is it injects more oxygen into the fire. And if you have enough fuel, it gets super hot. And that's what's going on right now. We have abnormally hot fires as a function of excessive fuel on the landscape. And that's generally across the western United States. Now, the East Coast has a lot of deer. We don't anymore. We're down.
Mm-hmm.
California's down, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Colorado, New Mexico, all down on deer populations. That's why we have all the grass and brush. And that's why nobody ever died from a campfire, because the smoke is not the stuff. It's at low temperature. Campfires don't burn at 2,000 degrees. They just don't. But these new fires, we're out in these fires and we're seeing molten aluminum on the ground. Engine blocks melted. Well, aluminum melts at 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. That's abnormally hot. Mag wheels, ladders, all melted. We've never seen that before. That's because there's so much grass and brush, it burns abnormally hot. And because of the loss of the herbivory. Now, we have a way to stop that. And the way to stop that is to reintroduce, like Ripple says in his paper, and I've seen it here empirically, you reintroduce the herbivores on the landscape and they'll mow the lawn again. They're, I just look at them like lawnmowers. What happens if you're, and anybody listening to the show that has a lawn knows, if you don't mow your lawn, it can get 2-3 feet tall. And then if it burns abnormally hot and it causes a lot of damage. So prescribed burning is not a solution. If you light an abnormal fuel load, it burns abnormally hot. Then you have abnormal heat being generated into the environment. And these fires are so hot now, besides melting aluminum, they're pasteurizing the soil 10 inches deep. So what's that do? Well, when you pasteurize your soil, it kills the microbiome, all the little critters that live in the ground that make plant food. They got to be there because they make plant food. That's what they do. And it also destroys the root system when you pasteurize soil 10 inches deep. These fires, that's how hot they are. They're pasteurizing soils 10 inches deep. And then the fires happen in the summer, and then the winter rains come. What happens? Well, the soil's destabilized. So you have mudslides and excessive erosion, and it goes down into the trout streams where the migratory salmon and steelhead just laid their eggs, and all the mud covers the eggs, and they die. And then everybody goes, gee whiz, our salmon and steelhead are going, they're going away. We don't have any fish. Well, there's why. That's the problem right there. It's, every time on the West Coast, we have these terrible fires we're having, and then the winter rains come and it washes all the sides of the hills are just decimated. They're cooked. And when the rain washes all that down, boom, it goes right into the stream, suffocates the eggs, because those little eggs are in between the little spaces of the gravel. They call those the reds. And so you got to have water circulating around them so those little fish in the egg can breathe. And if you cover that with mud, they die. So what we can do, we have a plan. This isn't a hopeless situation. The Bureau of Land Management has 70,000 wild horses in government holding camps. They rounded them up. They're supposed to be out there protected, wild and free, but because of economic pressure on the public land now, you got commercial livestock guys that want all the land for grazing cattle. You got mining, minerals, oil, gas. All those people want to be on public land, and the horses are in the way. Now, President Nixon signed the 71 Act to have them there. The 1971 Free Roaming Wild Horse and Burro Protection Act said they got to be there. That's what it says. They're an integral part of public land. But the problem is a lot of the land where they happen to be right now is under economic conflict. They're economic battlefields, in other words. Everybody's vying, and it's trillions of dollars we're talking about at stake here. And the horses, they say, well, they're protected, but they have no commercial value. So let's just get rid of them. So the BLM is operating in a way it's criminal, and they're violating the intent of that important law. There was no eagle and buggy. We built America off the backs of these horses, horse and buggy. Never, it wasn't eagle and buggy. And by the way, the people, the Congress critters, want to make the bison the American mammal. I got news for them. The bison, elk, and deer came across Beringia from Asia 200,000 years ago. The oldest bison fossil is 200,000 years in North America. The modern horse you see in the picture behind me up here, and the modern horse we all see out there, Equus caballus, they've been here 2 million years. That's a fact. That is a fact. So they're 10 times older than the bison on this continent. So that is the American mammal, is the horse, and the horse is man's best friend. We built civilization with horses. The people don't know their history. Beringia, the land bridge between Alaska and Siberia, became available for animals to go both directions about 1 million years ago. Well, 1 million years ago, horses moved into Eurasia. That's how they got all their equids. Zebras are evolved from the horses that crossed from North America 1 million years ago, and they kept crossing all the way up to a couple 100,000 years ago. They went in there, and that's how they got all them different horses in Eurasia. Zebras, Konik horses, bow tie horses, the horses Genghis Khan had, all the horses the Egyptians had. They all came from here. They crossed Beringia, and then 6,500 years ago in those places, they started breeding them. And they bred them for specific characteristics and size, because wild horses are little.
Mm-hmm.
They're a small animal. Up here where I am, we have ancestral horses. Our herd was seen in 1579 by Sir Francis Drake. He was sailed around Cape Horn, came up here because Queen Elizabeth wanted to conquer the Pacific Northwest. And his job was to find out if what was out here. Was there gold? Was there gems? Was there all the stuff the Spanish were finding with indigenous people on the other side of the continent? So they came up here and they saw the horses, and they put that in the log because horses were an important asset back then. In those days, the 16th century, horses were critical to do anything. So that went in the log. Well, guess what? That was found in the British Museum. It's in a peer-reviewed, published scientific study by Dr. Yvette Running Horse Collin, that horses were seen on what is today California-Oregon border, right where I am. So our horses have provenance going back to 1579, and that is 100 years before all the other scientists think that the indigenous got horses. See, our sighting in 1579 was 100 years before the Pueblo Revolt in 1680. If you look up the Pueblo Revolt, that's when everybody says the indigenous got horses from the Spaniards. Well, newsflash, new information's come to light. We know that these horses, there's fossils right here. So our herd of 200 horses that we protect are actually grazing over the fossils of their ancestors here, and they've been here for millennia. And their grazing stopped a fire here. We had a big fire in 2018, let me back up. In May of 2018, Colorado College came down to do a documentary about my research. So they filmed me up there where the horses were reducing the fuel. It wasn't 3 feet tall. It was mowed down. The lawn was mowed to a couple inches because horses graze. And they do it symbiotically because they're the only mammal when they poop, the horses survive their digestive tract. And the 90%, about roughly, there's been studies called germinability of horse dung. About 90% of the seeds they eat come out and grow in their droppings. That doesn't happen with ruminids. Ruminids, by the way, are cattle, sheep, goats, deer, and elk. They chew a cud. So what does that mean? When they eat seeded grass and plants, it goes down in the first chamber, they burp it up and they chew it again. When you chew it 2-3 times, it crushes all the seed. So very few seeds from native plants survive the digestive tract of ruminids, cows, sheep, goats, deer, and elk. So they don't reseed. And that's why horses were critical on this landscape. They were here 2 million years. Deer, elk, bison, cows came 500 years ago with the settlers, so they're invasive species. Cows, sheep, and goats all came from the old world. They never came. There's no cow fossils anywhere in North America. And so all of them other critters are relative newcomers. The horse has been here 2 million years doing a very important ecological job. They're farmers. They plant food for all the other critters, and everything benefits, including the bees and the butterflies. The flowering plants provide nectar for pollinators. So, the horse is truly, the American horse is truly a keystone herbivore. They're absolutely critical to the health of any ecosystem, and they protect forests because they're grazing. By reducing fuel, it reduces the temperature of the fire to the realm of a normal fire that a forest needs to clean the floor. See, a lot of these conifers are fire evolved. They need fire for reproduction. But when fire gets to 2,000 degrees, it kills every single fire evolved tree.
Hmm.
Trees that have been around for thousands of years, they can't take the new fire. It's too hot because of
Hmm.
all the grass and brush that's on fire. So when you mow that down, then the fire will be normal again, and the trees can survive it again because they have the special bark. So our plan is put the horses out of government holding that shouldn't be there anyway. They shouldn't be in jail. They round them up. They brand them. That's the preamble of the Wild Horse and Burro Act says you can't round them up, you can't brand them, you can't harass them, and you can't kill them. That's what it says right at the beginning of the act. Federal law.
Under Nixon.
BLM does all this.
Mm-hmm.
Under Nixon, yeah, you can look it up. What Free Roaming Wild Horse and Burro Protection Act, 1971, President Richard M. Nixon. So, bottom line is the BLM does all those things to the horses. They violate the intent of that act. They violate it, and they're doing it in a way that deprives Americans of their heritage. These are our heritage horses. I mean, we built this country off their backs, and that's why Nixon protected them. And he protected them when they were down to 25,000 horses in America. Well, guess what? BLM's new plan, that's what 25,000 is what triggered the Protection Act when men were thinking logically. You know, today, because of economic and loss of moral fortitude, money controls people more than morals now. And it's a sad thing to watch the human race decline the way it is because of loss of moral fiber. And in lieu of mammon, you know, people want money more than anything. It's terrible. So the bottom line is these poor horses now, they round them up, they brand them, they sterilize them. We lose genetics like crazy. They don't do any fertility. They don't do any kind of genetic studies before they sterilize them. They sterilize all these horses and they put them in these government camps. There's 70,000 of them. Okay. Each horse eats about 5 tons of grass and brush a day. If we take those 70,000 horses and we move them out here and strategically locate them to protect critical forests and critical wilderness from fire, because we're going to lose everything. We're going to lose all of our forests. There'll be nothing left soon. That's the path we're on right now. If we move these guys out and give them their freedom again, which Nixon said they earned because they built America with us, then we do two things. We don't have to spend $150 million a year in tax dollars feeding them in prison. Because right now, they round them up from their natural habitats, put them in prison, and all of us have to pay $150 million a year feeding them cheap grass hay. So they don't even get the nutrients they got as wild horses. So we save $150 million a year. We put them out here, and then guess what? When you look at those losses we just talked about, $218 billion every year in health impacts, and the $50 billion a year in insurance, property and casualty losses from insurance companies. If we make a 5% dent in that, we're talking $218 billion. If you make a 5% dent, that is billions of dollars a year in savings.
Wow.
And you're saving human life. You're saving human life. You're saving little kids from growing up with and dying maybe after their first date or after the prom. You know, I got grandkids. I don't want them to have lung damage like I do. I don't want them to die like my wife did from the fire. And like the other 5,000 Californians that died the same year she died. I was at a total loss with all these white-coated, the top experts in America from Johns Hopkins and Mayo Clinic scratching their heads. In 2019, nobody knew what was going on. We know now, and we know what to do. Got to get our herbivores back out there because that's the only way you can reduce fire. If you log and you open up the forest canopy, what happens? The understory grows immediately. As soon as you open up the canopy, even thinning the forest, as soon as you get sunlight and more rain on the ground, the grass and brush takes off. So, and with no herbivory there, we've got a depleted herbivory. That's a fact. That stuff takes off, and then the first spark, lightning, whatever, it doesn't matter. You lose your whole forest. It's gone. That's it. It's gone. I mean, we've already lost 70% of the Kalmiopsis wilderness, and on the southern Oregon coast, down by Gold Beach and Brookings, Oregon, where the Rogue River is. That's where the big redwood forest is. We've already lost 70% of that forest to wildfire. It won't be back. It's going to take 4 generations. Some of those trees were 500, 1,000 years old. And some of them may never come back, ever. because that area keeps burning over every year because there's grass and brush. When you remove the forest, you could clear cut all of Oregon. Then you just have grass and brush fires, and we just talked about that. 64% of all deaths, or all the costs and deaths, are from grass and brush fires, not forest fires. So, we've got to, logging is not a solution. Prescribed burning on super overgrown properties, that just causes abnormal heat, and then you do environmental damage. So, and in fact, all the new range management plans the BLM's putting out there has sections on fire, prescribed burning. It says you can't do it until you pre-treat the fuel, meaning you got to go mow it in the wilderness. Can you imagine mowing 10 million acres somehow?
No.
That's a laugh. Yeah, and it's not going to happen. You can't replace what nature does best, and those horses are the number one lawnmowers. They can do 30 pounds a day of grass and brush. They do it ubiquitously. They don't sue you. They don't need unemployment. They don't need retirement funds. They quietly do it, and they don't bother anybody. And that's our plan. That is the plan. It's got a big long name: Natural Wildfire Abatement and Forest Protection Plan. That's the big long scientific name for our plan: Natural Wildfire Abatement and Forest Protection Plan. But I said, that's great for scientists that like these big long names. I don't abide by that. I call it Wild Horse Fire Brigade. It's real simple. Put the horses out there. They're a fire brigade. They'll clean up the fuel, and you'll have less fire. It's that simple.
Well, we have just about 2 minutes left or so. This is, I wish we had a lot more time. This is incredibly fascinating. We have a question here. Wendy Clarkson. Joel, I watch your show regularly, but this show everyone needs to see. Wow, thank you. Thank you, Wendy. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I live near Berkeley. So she knows what you're talking about. She's picking up what you're laying down. So in the next few moments, how can people, someone listening, watching this, this is going to get a wide reach. What can people do to help?
Two things. All the research we're doing, including helping people understand once we rewild horses, we're going to need people with empirical experience to manage wild herds. And I've lived with them for 12 years. I can go up to a wild mountain stallion that breathes the breath of God out of his nostrils and pull ticks off his chest, because they know me and I know them, and I know how to approach them, and I can teach other people that. And if you're going to manage these guys, you need to know the natural horse behaviors. And so we're funded by donations, and I can only do what donations let me do. We can only do so much, and we have to support this cultural heritage herd. This is the only herd like it on the whole West Coast of the United States. And we're taking care of this herd, and that costs money too. We have to do rescues. We have to, some of these older mares, because their genetics are so rare, we have to keep them alive as long as possible to get more babies, because you can't find these genetics anywhere. They're gone. So we need donations. That's critical to our survival.
And the website is wildhorsefirebrigade.org, right?
.org.
Wildhorsefirebrigade.org. Okay.
Correct. wildhorsefirebrigade.org. And if you just Google Wild Horse Fire Brigade, it comes right up. The other thing we need people to write letters, not emails, letters to the head of the Department of Interior, Secretary Doug Burgum, because Robert Kennedy and his team, he's the head of the Health and Human Services now, Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr., just sent an email over to Doug Burgum at DOI, Secretary of the Department of Interior, saying that he needs to appoint me to run the Wild Horse and Burro program so we can do this right for a change, because it's been done wrong for 40 years. Just wrong. And it's costing taxpayers a fortune doing it wrong. Because if we manage the horses different, we could save billions of dollars a year, and the horses can live wild and free like the law intends. And it's still there. It's on the books. It isn't an abolished law. So we need donations. We have a PayPal button at our website, wildhorsefirebrigade.org, or you can just Google Wild and find that. We need people to write Congress critters and say, look, we need to do this. This fire is killing thousands of people every year. Some of these people will never get a chance to go on a first date. Some of these teenagers, they'll die, or they'll die at the peak of their career. We're talking. Yeah.
William, we're out of time, but Wild Horse Fire Brigade, and let's talk afterwards because I have some ideas. I know some people, and we'll see what we can do.
I appreciate it.
So Wild Horse Fire Brigade, folks, and William, thank you so much for taking time out of your crazy schedule to be with us tonight and today, and we really appreciate you.
My pleasure.
You have just experienced another episode of the Mischief Maker broadcast. Hit the subscribe button. Connect at chiefmischiefmaker.com. Thanks for coming along for the ride. And hopefully, you are now a bit closer to becoming a mischief maker in your part of the world.